All right, guys. We are here today with Larry Watson. He is the owner of Pathway Consulting. So he facilitates massive success and positive transformation with people. Just an incredible job. I know myself, I'm moving into that space as I go, and I work with people and do transformational coaching. So really, we are like in the same vein here. He is also the author of The Art of Victory, which is an incredible book talking about the talk that he had during the Victory of Light on the art of victory with the law of attraction. So with that being said, we welcome you and we're thankful to be able to talk to you. So let us know a little bit about yourself, Larry.
Yeah, this is kind of my third chapter in my life. So, the other chapters don't sound so connected in a way, but they are. Whatever happens to get us to this point is perfect and part of our destiny, etc. So, I've enjoyed it. Previous to this, I was an artist for 20 years, working in ceramic art and pottery. So, one of the stories that really kind of shocks me is I was at an art exhibit, and my mother was a painter and she taught painting, and she had an exhibit of her students' work. I was at the exhibit and a woman came up to me and said, "You're Larry Watson, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah, I think." And she said, you changed my life." And I was really kind of surprised because I didn't recognize her. She said, "Oh no, it was like 25 years ago." Huh. She said, "You did a workshop on the business of art." And she said, "You asked a simple question. You said, ask the group, there's 50 people there, and you asked how many of you call yourself an artist, and only 4 people raised their hand." And she said, you said, that's the first thing that's got to change. You got to look in the mirror in the morning and say, I'm an artist." And she said, so the next day I got up and I looked in the mirror and I couldn't say it. I just cried. And she said, but I tried it every day. For 10 days, I looked in the mirror and cried. And she said, then on the 11th day, I couldn't say it. And she said, that's when my life changed. So the reason I say that is that I've recently, just the last 10 years, 8 years, become a coach and doing workshops and speaking, but apparently I had effects on people way back, and it's affirming to know that transformation is possible when people believe in you. That's really the point of it.
Yeah, I think talking about varied backgrounds, right? So I come from my background. I did lots of martial arts. I was always very into sports, or at least odd sports, right? So I did mixed martial arts. I fought professionally doing that. Now I do long, crazy 60, 70-hour endurance events, some of the top events in the world. I've been to China. I've been to Scotland doing events, and it's military-style endurance. So, I literally have people yelling at me, telling me to do this, telling me to do that. And, where it seems very disconnected, it is the lessons that we learn through those times that bring us to the people we are today and allow us that experience to be able to help other people. Because, people are out there and they need help. And not that we can give them help, but we can direct them into figuring it out. Right? Because ultimately we can't help anybody. They have to choose to help themselves. They have to make that decision to say, hey, you know what? I'm tired of living the way that I'm living. I need to figure out how to live another way. How can I look at this differently? And I think it's important that you said that it is the questions that we asked ourselves, and the things that we tell ourselves all the time that literally transform our lives. Speaking of that, just behind me, just because you said artistry and ceramics, me and my fiance went a month or two ago, and we went and did ceramic bowls, and they're terrible, but they're very, very special to us because it was our first project together going out there and working on that. Oddly enough, hers are much better than mine. I don't know what that says, but they are much better. Every time I pick it up, I'm like, why is her name on the bottom of it? And mine are terrible. So there is definitely an art to it. So with that, tell us more.
Well, I think, the art of victory was kind of a striking moment when I thought of that title for my book. The book is really about that. And I think it's true for everybody. But let me explain the term in pieces here. So first of all, there's victory. So what is victory? I mean, for you, it means competition. For a lot of what you do, what you've done, it means competition. And most people think of that way as win or lose. But for me, in this context, it's about the winner of self, the victory over what's going on for us, the victory over our old ways of thinking, victory over victim thinking. When am I a victor? When am I a victim? And so victory takes on a different meaning in that sense. And the word art is, it's not a matter of a product. That's, as an artist myself, that's a large part of what I did was I created things and then sold them. And that wasn't really the art of it. The art is the process. And again, my mother was an artist, and I remember as a kid, she would bring home her paintings from her class, and they weren't always great paintings, and she admitted it. And so some of the paintings got painted over with gesso, white, and that was the start of a new painting. And sometimes, as she went along later in her years, she started recognizing that the painting overall was bad, but there was this one little piece that was really good, and she would actually cut it out of the painting, put it on a new canvas, and start from there. And I think that's a great illustration of our lives. Do we really want the whole painting? We can start over, or we can start with the part that really is in alignment with us. So that's the art of victory. And when we come to the law of attraction, I mean, everybody struggles with it. I'm not an expert in the sense that it works for me every time. It's definitely not the case. So I let people know that, I'm not trying to pretend that I'm the manifester of the world. But I've learned a lot about it, and I love the process, and I know the principle is there. And as we grow, we learn how to use it. But the challenge is we're born in this body with this mind that doesn't always align with what the law of attraction is about. We have ego, and we have our spiritual side. And bringing those together, which is the way I feel about it, because science actually affirms the process of the law of attraction. So it's not contradictory.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You talked about, the victory of art, and, with what I do, it's really interesting because I used to compete all the time because, when I was fighting, it was one person against another. And when I moved into this space of endurance events, I went from competing with people to only competing with myself, which was a complete shift in my mind, which was something I needed to do because I was so competitive with other people for so long that I neglected myself, right? I was constantly worried about, if I could be better than anybody else, and I wasn't challenging myself to be better than just me. And so I got into this place where now, doing these endurance events, I get to learn all kinds of things about me, because it is literally going out there and surviving until the end. There is no competition among the competitors. It is just making it to the end of it. So when you're 40 hours in and you've had no sleep and a little bit of food, and your next goal is to do a 25-mile hike carrying 60, 70 pounds with you going up the side of a mountain, there is no other person that you're competing with other than yourself. And it is shifting that mind to realize that we can do anything that we decide we're going to do. We're the ones that put roadblocks in our way and say, I can't do that. I see people all the time because I do physical fitness a lot, running classes and things. I see people that walk in and they defeat themselves before they ever make it in there. They come in and they say, oh my God, I could never do anything like that, which is complete bullshit, right? We could all do it. There may be some physical limitations that we have. Maybe we need to modify things, but it really is the mentality that we have that allows us to keep pushing forward. When we can finally take those things out of the way, the obstacles are gone. It's pure will. It is us deciding that we are going to go and do something. It's the same thing as we move into this idea of the law of attraction. We can literally have anything we want. If we decide and we put enough action towards it, we can have that. You know, whether it's we want to learn how to be the best flutist, right? You need to learn how to play a flute. So if you take the time, you put the commitment towards it, you start moving in that direction, you'll be able to learn how to do it. You can get better at it. And in that space, maybe you can be the best. But it takes more than just saying, hey, you know, I really want to have this thing. There has to be action that goes with it. And I think that's what we sometimes in the community, we forget that it takes more than just intention. You know, intention is great, but there needs to be action with that intention. So anyway, thoughts?
Yeah, and that's what I talked about at the Victory of Light was that the Quakers' phrase is pray, then move your feet. Because, you know, God works through us, or the universe works through us, however you want to describe it. The one source works through us. So, yeah, the obstacles are a big part of what I was talking about. And the biggest challenge with those obstacles is being able to see them when they show up, because they're coming from within, right? Yeah. They're part of our ego that's creating these obstacles of thought, right? It's about thought. This is just like you said. We can do anything if we understand it, know it, and believe it, and make a decision, and all of those things. So that's a big part of it. You know, the metaphor I use is that my talk was called the Trolls, Saboteurs, and the Upper Limit Problem. And the reason I say trolls is because in my work, I consider myself the assistant to building a bridge for the client. You know, if somebody wants to go from here to there, well, first of all, they need to know where there is, right? Here's the big question. What is the direction? Where do I want to end up? And a lot of people, I'm sure you've experienced this, they don't allow themselves to dream.
Yeah.
Have you had that experience?
Oh, for sure. There are so many people are limited because of their beliefs and their upbringing. And they think that, you know, well, you know, my whole family has always been, you know, they've always been workers in a factory, and I'm never going to be able to be more than that. And they cap themselves off. They refuse to dream about being better than that, about doing more than that. It's why you see families and generations of families. You'll have one person that's ever went to college, right? Now, that's starting to change, but historically speaking, that has been the case. And it's a shame. You know, you have that one person that allowed themselves to dream in that family and make something better. And hopefully that legacy that they have ends up bringing more of that along so that their whole family at some point is uplifted.
Yes. So you know, being able to figure out that direction and then building the bridge is really about that. I bring the tools and the client brings the resources. You know, the bridges on the Ohio River in Cincinnati, there's 7 different bridges and they all look different, right? And that's because there were different people that had different tools and different resources to build those. So that's what I'm clear about. Where the trolls come in is that trolls love bridges. Wherever there's a bridge, there are trolls, right? They want to reach up, pull us back from our success. Because success will manifest our fears. Because that's underneath us. So those fears are there. They've held us back to this point. And then when we start moving forward, those trolls, those fears will come up and show us you shouldn't be doing this. You can't do this. And that's a huge part of the sabotage process that we have. And it's also part of the law of attraction. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. I certainly have, where I got what I wanted, and then I'm like, what? I mean, somebody that I was working with called me up and said, Larry, I just got this phone call. She was from Austria, and she said that that she got a phone call that these people were going to pay for her to come over and visit her mother. She hadn't seen her mother in 11 years.
Wow.
And she said, they just came out of the blue that, you know, they collect this money as a donation to help somebody. She said, what is this? You know, they're just giving me this. I don't deserve this. That's what she said. I don't deserve this. And I said, just one sentence. I said, the universe loves you. That's all we have to know. And after that, it was fine.
I had somebody tell me a long time ago that that when you take away the ability of somebody to give, you really trying to remember the exact phrase that he used. Anyway, the essence of it is that you don't allow them the joy of giving, right? And ultimately, that's what, in those types of situations, in lots of situations, that's what people are doing. So you accept that graciously. You don't have to understand it, right? But you accept it graciously because it is an amazing blessing that the universe is providing. You're getting something that you need, and they're getting something that they need because they get that joy from being able to do that. Another thing that you said that really struck me is the whole trolls under the bridge thing. I talked to another friend of mine a couple weeks ago, and he was mentioning, you know, Jeff, fear is always going to be there. It doesn't matter where you're at, right? It doesn't matter whether you're at the highest levels, whether you're making $250,000 a year or you're making $20,000 a year. Fear is always there. It's a part of life. It's all about learning how to dance with that fear, how to deal with that fear, because it is always going to be there. There are always going to be struggles. They may change faces, but they're there, and they're gonna be there to try to rein us in. But that's a good thing, because sometimes it brings us back down to where we need to be, rather than getting ourselves in trouble, because it's easy to do.
It's true. It's true. So part of the obstacles, you know, looking at what are the obstacles, you know, what are the ways that we think that prevent, and I don't know if I should go into the law of attraction a little bit to understand how it works. Okay. So one of my metaphors is that when you have two tuning forks of the same key in a room and you tap one of them, the other one starts ringing too. And many people will say, Bob Proctor says this, it's not the law of attraction, it's the law of vibration. What is the vibration that we're creating? And and part of that to me too is the science. There's a book called The Elegant Universe. I don't know if you've heard of it. And it's really about astrophysics. And it's, you know, Neil deGrasse Tyson has that new book out. It's supposed to be condensed. Not as powerful. It's a primer, but it's not as powerful as this book. Elegant Universe it goes through the evolution of physics as we know it, and gets to the final point of string theory. And the point of that is that matter is not made up of matter, it's made up of these strings, just as a concept, you know, as much as we can understand, that vibrate. And the rate at which they vibrate determines what kind of material that creates. So for me, what my mind goes to is that we are vibrating beings, and as we create our vibrations, we are creating the tuning fork of that manifesting. Okay, so we're ringing this tuning fork, and then we're harmonizing, we're resonating with the tuning fork of the universe, and string theory is one way to say that, so that it is clear about what its purpose is, what the universe's purpose is for us. So that's a little more about the law of attraction for me. So we know that part of the process of using the law of attraction is affirmations. You know, you can use affirmations. Sometimes you don't need it, because for me, one of the examples of how the law of attraction worked for me without affirmations was merely just a thought. When I was in a manifesting class, we were asked to think about a car that we would like to have, our dream car, right? Which is pretty hard for me, because, you know, what would it be? A Maserati, a Jaguar? You know, so many possibilities, I couldn't decide. And then I was freaking out about the idea of having the car, and then how much is maintenance and insurance, and you know, it was creating this stress. And then I said, you know, what would be really cool is if somebody handed me the keys to their dream car for a week, and I could just drive. I could go out west and go as fast as I wanted. You know, I could just really enjoy that, and then hand the keys back. 3 weeks later, I get a call from a friend. It says, I'm going to Europe for almost nothing. You want to go with me? Sure. So we land at the airport. Her brother had the car that we were going to be driving, because it was for his work. They gave him a rental car, and he said, I traded it in for an upgrade so that you would have GPS. This is a few years ago. And so as we get to the car, it's a Jaguar. And he says, Larry, you want to be the other driver, because I can only have one other driver. And he was going to be working all week. I would be driving the car for a week. And then we pull out on the expressway, and I realize, oh, we're in Germany. This is the Autobahn. I get to drive as fast as I want for a week in somebody else's dream car. So that's one of the important things to know, is that how hard are we grasping on to this idea, or how much does it make us feel good?
Yeah. One of the things that we had discussed on another call that I had is we discussed a little bit about the law of attraction, and we talked about how there are times where you have to be careful with the energy that you're putting towards whatever it is, and being fairly specific on what's going on, because, you know, there are certain things, like lots of people are always trying to attract a mate, right? They want some kind of relationship in their life. And if we're not very specific about it, we'll get all kinds of relationships in our life. They may not be the relationships that we want, or the relationships that we would desire, which is why, you know, we talk a lot about making sure that you take time to write those things out. Really have something to look at, so that you have, you know, what do you want in a spouse, in a mate? You know, what do you want in that person? You know, what are the qualities that you're looking for? Not so much so that you can have that exact thing, but so that you already know the destination, right? You already mentioned that. Because if you don't know the destination, you're liable to get anything that's coming your way. So really being able to craft that and know exactly what you're looking for, how you want that experience. And I think that's the beautiful thing that you were saying. It happened exactly how you were looking for that experience, right? You know, you got the car, you got to drive somebody else's car for a week as fast as you can. And, you know, we just need to remember that, because it's the things that we're asking for that are going to be attracted to us. And if we ask bad questions, we're going to have less than positive results from that. So we have to ask the good questions to get the results that we really want.
Yes, we do. And the final thing to making that list of the attributes is, for me, is at the end, this or something better.
Yeah.
Because better doesn't mean more. You know, some people will say this or something greater. Well, maybe greater, bigger isn't better. You know, maybe smaller is better. You know, maybe less is better. Maybe we'll handle it better. That's just an interesting element to me too. But the other part of that is that we have, you know, a lot of times we are kind of stuck with what has been, you know, and we need to work on creating what we call denial. And that doesn't mean that we deny that it exists, but that we deny it to have power over our good. So being able to say, up until now, this has happened. This has been the case. This is my situation. This has been the conditions up until now. And I, how's the phrase go? It is powerless to keep me from my good. It is powerless to keep me from my good. So we're setting aside the conditions so that we can move forward to what it is we really want. We can hold that in, and it's kind of creating the vacuum for the universe to put in what we want. You know, we're letting it go. We're saying this isn't ours anymore. Letting it go and allowing in what we want.
It's really interesting. I find that the synchronicity of things that are going in my own life right now, every person that I talk to has said something that really resonated with me personally. Just last night, I was having a conversation with my fiance, and we were talking about some things that, you know, have been a struggle for me personally in the past, and that seem to crop up every once in a while. And there are things that I don't want in my life, right? There are things that I'm trying to, you know, change that paradigm that I've had in the past. And I think that there are times where, you know, I need to look at that and not allow that thing to continue to be an issue. I need to do exactly what you said, is, you know, denying that, you know, because it doesn't hold any power over me any longer. You know, we often tell ourselves stories, and those stories become who we are. You know, if the amazing thing is that we live in a life where we can change the story, right? We're the ones that are writing it, and we have a choice to take that part out. We often allow the story, like a movie, just to play and forget that we have an active role in it. We can change that story. We can make it different. There can be a different outcome. It doesn't have to be the same way over and over and over again in our lives. We have the choice to do that. But so often we get lulled to sleep thinking that things will never change and I'm just the person that I am. But that's not true. You mentioned that right at the beginning, that this is the third like evolution of your life. You know, I grew up in the middle of the inner city, right? I grew up right outside of Philadelphia. I grew up with gangs and people shooting each other. I grew up in an abusive household. So I went through all these things in my past. That's not who I am anymore, right? That was who I was then. This is who I am now. And so often, again, you have those trolls under the bridge, those people that remember you how you were and refuse to allow you to continue to move forward. And if they could, they'd pull you right back there. Again, my fiance is always teaching me some amazing things, and boundaries end up being a great thing there, and really putting up those boundaries and not allowing those people, because it's not just fears that hold us back. Sometimes there are physical people in our lives that are trying to hold us back to where they are comfortable with our life. right? Because as we start moving forward, things change. We become different people, and they can't handle that. So we have to allow those people. They're not bad. They're not anything. They just need to go do their thing so we can go and do our thing, and we can live in our own highest good.
Well, the challenge for them is that we created our relationship based on certain things, and then when we take those things away, that doesn't seem fair to them. You know, that's the basis of our relationship. What do you mean our basis of our relationship is now our spiritual being, or, you know, trying to reach higher levels of actualization? What is that about? I don't want to do anything with that, because then I'll have to face my own stuff.
Yeah, it's you know, you see that all the time when people go and they have a group of friends that they used to go out and drink with all the time. They always went out to the bars and they hung out. Then all of a sudden, that friend decides that they want more out of their life than just going to the bar every weekend and hanging out and drinking every night. And they decide that they want more. So they decide, they go out there and they start doing that. And those friends get upset, like, hey, you're not coming and hanging out with us anymore. What's going on? And it's always sad to me when I see people that get so stuck in a place where they feel like that they can't go anywhere else, that they start to allow those dreams and those aspirations to die, and they don't pick those up and continue going. You know, one of the things that I believe it's Tony Robbins that talks a little bit about it, but as a child, we have all these dreams and these ideas that we want to do. If we could just get back to that mindset where everything is a possibility, where everything is open, because ultimately it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter your age. You can still achieve those things. You can still move forward. We look at KFC, Colonel Sanders, right? Like in his 70s when he started KFC. Of course, now he's not around anymore, but KFC is everywhere, right? Not that it's the best thing in the world to eat, but he ended up building an empire on it, right? And we still see every actor out there looking like Colonel Sanders now in the commercials. So it's incredible what you can do no matter where you're at. Like, my dad lives with me. I love him to death. He's 70 years old now, and he struggles because he feels like he's at the end of his life. And I'm always sitting there like, Dad, you know, there's so much more. You know, you don't have to do just this. And it's a great reminder for me that I don't ever want to be in that place where I feel like it's all over, right? I always want to be at that place where I'm healthy, that my health is not causing me issues, that I'm able to go out there and do the things that I want to do and to help as many people as I can possibly help for the rest of my life, whether that's when I'm 80 years old or when I'm 60 years old. Doesn't matter.
I'm with you on that one. Yeah. So a little more about the sabotaging. You know, we one of the exercises that I did at the Victory of Light was I had people write down a fantasy, not a goal, you know, because just like we were talking about, people won't allow themselves to think about what they could really have. Most people say, when I say, what are your dreams? Well, I'd like to retire with a whole bunch of money so that I can be on vacation a lot. And, you know, that's just more. There's no joy in that. That's just more. And that's what we've done all our lives, is struggle for more. Every thought, just about every thought that I have, you know, I realized that just the other day, it's all about more. You know, that's this constant striving. But what would be a fantasy? You know, so I had them say, you know, if there's no limits to money, time, energy, age, you know, what would be your fantasy? You know? So they wrote down some ridiculous thing. And then I said, I want you to write 10 reasons that you can't do that. No problem. They were writing away. I want to tell you, it was this list, you know. Normally, if I have a workshop, I do 20 items, and they can come up with 20 items. So then I said, okay, look at that list and tell me which ones of them are not true. And so I'd say, what was one of yours on your list? first thing that anybody ever says at this exercise is money. And I said, well, is that true? And they think about it. I said, how much was the last lottery? That one lottery is $1.4 billion. Is that not enough money? Will that take care of it? Is there not enough money? And then the next one is time. There's not enough time. Is that true? So we have these ideas that we've grown up with, that we've created for ourselves. I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, all of that stuff on top of that. These are the saboteurs that we have to be aware of, because awareness is the key. But with awareness, we can change. Without awareness, probably not going to happen. With awareness, change is inevitable. So that's the start, and that's what you and I do with coaching clients, isn't it? We help people see what their sabotaging points are so that they can choose something else. It's like the story of the woman that comes out of her house and walks down the street and falls in a hole. Next day, she comes out of her house and she walks down the street and she falls in the hole and says, wait a minute, I'm in a hole. Help, somebody help me. Somebody brings a ladder. Next day, she comes out of the house and walks down the street and sees the hole and goes around it. And the next day, she comes out of the house, goes down a different street. So without awareness, we don't have a choice. That's something that really gets to people. Without awareness, we don't have a choice. This is just the way we're going to always do things.
Well, and that's one of the things that I think is important, is that we need to remember that we all need those people, whether it's a coach, whether it's a good friend, whoever it is, whether it's a mentor, that can help us see those obstacles and see those things in our life. Because it's really hard, because we as people get fixated in one place and we put these nice little blinders on, and then we can't see anything else around us. We need people to help us see that and have that awareness to really know where those holes are, because often we're looking at one thing and we forget about what's around us. And I know all of us are guilty of that. There's nobody that hasn't fallen into that same trap. We need people to shift our awareness and say, listen, look at it from this angle instead of that one, because the way that you're looking at it is what is causing the problems to begin with. So, if we can just shift that perspective just a little bit, we can have so much more, and we can do so much better. One of the things I was thinking about earlier when you were talking about the whole so much more thing is that there are times when and this may start a whole nother conversation, but when we're looking at attracting things into our life, that there are times to get what we desire and what we want. There may be moments that we have to learn things to get there. And those lessons may be painful lessons. It may be a lesson of we need to take certain people out of our life to move in that direction because they're the ones that are holding us back. Sometimes it's family members that won't allow us to live to our fullest potential because they want to keep us in the box that they have for us. And maybe we need to let those relationships go. And that could be painful for some people so that we can move forward. Or maybe it's a thing like coaching. This is a big thing. It happens a lot. Is, people struggle with the monetary part of it, right? Like, well, how do I pay for that? I know that I need it. Ultimately, you have to make that investment in yourself to make sure that you're getting the best that you possibly can. Because let's face it, when we don't invest in ourselves and we don't take that time to make sure that we put our money behind it, then we don't do it. It's why people go to gyms and they pay $5 a month and they go once every 6 months, right? But when they pay money for it, they make a commitment and they follow through on it and they go there because there is other intrinsic motivation to be there rather than just, I'm tired today. I don't want to go and do that. Even though we know that if we don't do that, our health is not as good. We're not as focused. Our health starts declining. We know all those things, but because it's not an immediate thing, we live in that microwave culture where we want everything immediately. If it's not an immediate thing, we don't react to it. We're just like, oh, okay, yeah, 40 years from now, I may have heart disease or I may have diabetes. And we don't realize that it's directly related to what we're doing right now. Everything is directly related to what we're doing right now. If you want to make $100,000, it's directly related to the habits and things that you're doing right now, right? You have to shift that if you're going to make it anywhere that you want to go.
Absolutely. And another point of we need to work with people, people who can point out things to us, people who have tools for us. The metaphor that I use is that one horse can pull 2,000 pounds. That's 1 horsepower. One horse can pull 2,000 pounds. 2 horses together can pull 21,000 pounds. And that's really true. And they've done studies even on physical work. When 2 people are doing something together, and I don't mean physically together, this was done in working with people who clean houses. So one person goes in and cleans a house, but 2 people go in and clean the house. They're not even in the same room. They're in different rooms, but they're in the same house cleaning. They do the work of 3 people. They do it in a third less time, which is, that's just physical aspect. But to me, the exponential improvement in our lives when we work with somebody. I actually have 3 coaches. 3 coaches. When I tell people, they're like, some of them are thinking, well, he must not be very good if he needs 3 coaches. But I have 3 coaches because I want to progress. I want to keep moving forward. I fired one of my coaches, and not fired, but I just decided I wanted to take a break. And in that area of my life, things went downhill. So I know how important it is. So we need that to find those saboteurs for us. The last thing I wanted to mention was the upper limit problem. Have you heard of the upper limit problem?
No.
It's from the book The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, and a lot of my philosophy comes from that book. I found it just a couple of years ago, so I've been coaching for a while, but it kind of really brings a lot together. But the upper limit problem is like a thermostat in our heads, in our psyches or whatever. We allow ourselves, and a thermostat in the summer, when the temperature gets to a certain point, if it goes past that temperature, the air conditioning comes on and brings it back down. So in our lives, we do the same thing with success. We have a perception that we're allowed to have X amount of success. And if we exceed that, we'll bring it back down with our sabotaging efforts. And the interesting thing about that is that it doesn't necessarily sabotage in the areas that we are successful in. So if we're financially successful, we might sabotage ourselves in our relationships or our health. So it can actually even go the other way. I know somebody who was very successful in their health. They lost 120 pounds, and they let their business go downhill. So that's one of those, it's just kind of fascinating how we do this to ourselves. So how do we, the big question is, how do we short circuit that thermostat? How do we fight that upper limit problem? And so, that's part of the coaching process, is to really understand what that is. I'll give you an example of how this happened. And the first time I did Victory of Light Expo, I was not really expecting great results. I'd been to some of the presentations, and I saw some of the crowds, and I knew the psychics were the ones that got the big crowds, right? Not not many of the other people. So the first time I went, the person speaking went past their time. So I had this really compressed time to get in there and get set up, and I'm busy getting set up, and I get set up, and then I look up and, okay, we're ready to go. And the room is standing room only.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow. Of course, that usually happens to a first timer. So I didn't know that at the time. I was just like, oh my God, look at this. This is great. And so I did the talk, and I got all these people that wanted to talk to me about coaching. And I was just like on cloud nine. I'm driving home and I'm thinking, man, this is so cool. I can't wait to I know I'll call my mom and I'll tell her, and my brother, he always is really excited for me. And then there's this, that one guy who said this would never work for me, that I would never be able to make this happen. I'm going to call that guy and I'm going to tell, I started screaming at my windshield. I'm driving down the road. I'm screaming at my windshield. My throat hurts. And that's what woke me up. And my throat hurts. I'm like, what the hell is this about? Just a second ago, seconds ago, I was on cloud nine, and now I'm doing this sabotage.
Yeah.
I was sabotaging myself with anger at somebody who wasn't even there, who doesn't know me I haven't talked to in 2 years. What is that about? That's the upper limit problem. And so I was able to reverse that. And that's what I help my clients do, is find the way to reverse that sabotaging effect of the upper limit problem, so that we can neutralize it.
So with that being said, we are running really close on time. So man, wonderful stuff. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. Just some great information. So if you would, let us know how to get in contact with you.
Well, the best way is to just call me. I'm available. My number is 859-635-5599. 859-635-5599. That's the best way to get a hold of me. For people, what I say is, if you're not willing to make a phone call, then you're probably not really interested.
Yeah.
And I'd rather not waste your time. If some people want to go to a website, and I can send you that, but that's not the information that you need. The website is static, and people need to understand. I need to understand where they're coming from and be able to tell them, yes, we might work together, or no, I'm not the person for you. And maybe I'd have them come to Jeff, because I don't need to be the answer for everybody. But that's the best way to get me, is just give me a call.
All right. Well, thank you, Larry, man. Thanks for coming on here. Thank you for the work you're doing out there, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right.